The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Minneapolis Business Inspections and Zoning Committee will now begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Business Inspections and Zoning Committee for today, May 5th. I'm Lisa Goodman, chairing the committee today. As we begin, I'll note for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members of the City Council and City staff as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared public health emergency. At this time, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
Councilmember Schrader.
Here.
Reich.
Present.
Gordon.
Here.
Fletcher.
Here.
Ellison.
Present.
Chair Goodman.
Present.
There's 6 present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. The agenda for today's meeting is before us. We'll begin with the consent agenda, which includes items 3 through 10. I'd like to ask Irene, the clerk, to read the consent agenda items 3 through 10 out loud for everybody.
Item number 3 is liquor license renewals for May 5. They include Holiday Station Store at 2124 Franklin Avenue East, Holiday Station Store at 5444 Nicollet Avenue, Holiday Station Store at 1331 Industrial Boulevard, and Holiday Station Store at 3550 Cedar Avenue South. Number 4 is an alley vacation application of Clay Dutra for 1626 East Lake Street and 2940 17th Avenue South. Number 5 is a rezoning application submitted by Sister Karen Mohan for 1619 and 1621 Fremont Avenue North. Item number 6 is a rezoning application on behalf of Collage Architects for 187-199 Irving Avenue North and 190 through 198 James Avenue North. Item 7 is rezoning application on behalf of Sudan Al-Kigani at 2007 Glenwood Avenue. Number 8 is a rezoning application for Double Yellow Line LLC at 4534 Nicollet Avenue. Item number 9 is rezoning application on behalf of Jane Majorano at 911 West 24th Street. Item number 10 is lease revisions for Community Care Clinics of Minnesota, address 2139 44th Avenue North. And that's the consent items.
Ms. Casper, I'm hearing from a number of our staff as well as members of the general public that there is no audio. So I'm not sure. It sounds like there's no audio from anyone. Can you hear me? Can members of the committee hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yes, I can hear you internally. I'm hearing from my staff who's watching online, this is Kimberly, that they are not able to hear from the online broadcast any of the audio coming from this meeting.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too from one of the applicants. So I'm not sure if we should pause so the clerk's office can decide what to do because we do have 2 public hearings.
Yes, Madam Chair, that would be our recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, Eric Hansen says he can hear it now.
Okay, it's IT declares that sound is working now. Is that correct?
Okay, so we'll see if there are outside folks who can hear it as we move through the consent agenda. I'd like to know if, since Irene has read all the items on the consent agenda, are there any items anyone would like to pull off for discussion or any comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the consent agenda.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Reich. Councilmember Reich. Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Chair Goodman,
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Those items are approved. Thank you. We'll move to item number 1, which is a public hearing. Item 1 is related to an interim use permit application submitted by Thrive Youth Services to establish a community residential facility for 8 children until May 5th, 2025 for a property located at 3647 Fremont Avenue North. I'd like to invite staff to give a presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Goodman and members of the committee. The project before you is a interim use permit to establish a community residential facility for 8 children. The location is at 3647 Fremont Avenue North. The subject site is zoned R4 and is occupied by a single family home that was constructed in 2004. The applicant has proposed to establish a community residential facility for up to 8 children ages 8 to 13 that will be located in the existing single family home. The use would be licensed by the Department of Human Services and would be staffed at all times. And this specific type of community residential facility proposed is a culturally specific youth emergency shelter. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to establish this use as an interim use permit due to the accelerated timeline that it would allow. If the project had submitted a conditional use permit application on the same day, there would be an additional 1-month delay due to public noticing timelines before the use could become active. So the applicant has proposed at this time, due to the emergency services nature of the community residential facility, to establish it as an interim use permit. Within the 5-year timeline granted as part of the interim use permit, they would then need to apply for a conditional use permit to further continue the use beyond May of 2025. Next slide, please. The site is shown here on Fremont Avenue North. Fremont Avenue North is a goods and services corridor. It's designated as Corridor 4 in the 2040 plan, and as noted, there are no internal or external changes proposed as part of the project. Staff was able to meet all of the findings for the interim use permit. The proposal, or the existing site, contains a residential garage for 2 parking spaces, and that satisfies the parking requirement for the 8 beds of the community residential facility. And I have included some additional plans here, but I'll leave it at this page unless committee members have specific questions and want to see the interior plans. Otherwise, staff is recommending approval of the interim use permit, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Silas, for that presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Silas with regard to this item or her presentation? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing and ask the clerk if there are any speakers in queue on this item.
We have 1 speaker registered to speak on this item, Shelton Johnson. If you
Okay.
want to
Mr. Johnson, are you here?
press star 6 to unmute and begin your comment.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, this is Shelton Johnson. Yes.
And would you like to provide testimony on this item, sir?
Yes, I'm here with my partner James Greer, who is also on the license as well, and he's going to speak to this.
Okay.
So we are looking to open a home. We're currently providing services in Mounds View, Minnesota. I am a 30-plus year foster parent, and we have a very successful facility in Mounds View, Minnesota. We're also housing some youth in New Brighton, Minnesota as well. Our program is well thought out, going very well, well organized, well staffed, and our youth are thriving and doing very well. And we're looking to open an emergency shelter over in the Minneapolis area. We are well sought out by Ramsey County and many surrounding counties, and they are seeking our services. And so we're looking to expand and to open in the the North Minneapolis area.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for calling in today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone else who is signed up to testify on this item.
There are no further speakers on this item.
Okay, with no additional speakers, I will close the public hearing and move approval of this item. Are there further comments or questions by anyone on the committee? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on item number 1.
Councilmember Schrader,
Aye.
Reich,
Aye.
Gordon,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Chair Goodman.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
That item is approved, and we'll move on to our final item on today's agenda, which is a quasi-judicial public hearing on item number 2. This is an appeal submitted by Ross Steitley on behalf of Sherman Associates regarding the Planning Commission's conditions of approval on a conditional use permit and a site plan review for the project located at 240 Portland Avenue and 500 530 3rd Street South. We'll begin with the staff report by Ms. Smith.
Sorry, I guess I was muted that whole time. Good afternoon, Councilmember Goodman and committee members. I'm Mayling Smith, and I'm presenting on behalf of CPED. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. The subject site is located along Washington Avenue South and is between Portland Avenue and 5th Avenue South. It currently contains a commercial parking lot and also fire station number 1. Next slide, please. So here's some photos of the existing conditions. You can see the fire station in the lower left and the commercial parking lot. Next slide, please. The project includes 2 buildings. The first is a 23-story tower with 238 dwelling units and ground floor commercial. Next slide, please. And then the second building is a 7-story residential building with 90 affordable units, as well as a new fire station and a principal parking facility. Next slide, please. So at their April 13th meeting, the Planning Commission approved the staff recommendation for all requested land use applications with a number of conditions, and the applicant is before you today to appeal condition number 2 of the conditional use permit for a principal parking facility and condition number 8 of the site plan review, both of which would eliminate the 3rd Street South curb cut. Next slide, please. And the appellant statement argues that the 3rd Street entrance would provide a public benefit by reducing congestion on 5th Avenue, which includes buses and fire trucks. The applicant is proposing a total of 3 curb cuts, not including the 55-foot wide curb cut leading to the 3 bays of the fire station on 5th Avenue. CPED staff found that 3 curb cuts would not be consistent with the zoning code's curb cut consolidation requirements. And in addition, the travel demand management plan submitted by the applicant shows that the difference between the traffic impacts in the 2 scenarios with and without the 3rd Street entrance would be very minimal. The Planning Commission decision to deny the 3rd Street South curb cut is also consistent with the view of Public Works, which has concluded that a maximum of 2 curb cuts would adequately serve the 584 parking stalls on the site, and that the elimination of the 3rd Street South curb cut in particular would be least impactful because it only provides one-way inbound traffic, and those potential users would travel about 250 more feet around the corner on 5th Avenue to easily enter the site. The Downtown Minneapolis Neighborhood Association has submitted a letter in response to the appeal, which supports the Planning Commission decision and is in opposition to the appeal, citing pedestrian safety concerns. Staff has received 1 comment from a nearby property owner who believes that the 5th Avenue South curb cut is the one that should be eliminated. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Smith on item number 2? I don't see any, Ms. Smith. Thank you so much for your report. We're going to proceed to open the public hearing. With this type of public hearing, we are going to give the appellant an opportunity to make their case first. Is the appellant or a representative of the appellant on the line?
There are several speakers lined up to speak.
So perhaps, since it says right on the screen, Ross Steitley is the appellant, why don't we take him or Mr. Sherman, the owner, first?
Press *6 to unmute.
This is George Sherman. I hope that people can hear me.
Why don't we check that, Mr. Sherman, just to make sure. Can everybody hear Mr. Sherman? If you can't, send us a note in the chat. Sounds like you can be heard, Mr. Sherman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman and committee members. This is George Sherman with Sherman Associates. Background, Fire Station number 1 in the Allied parking parcel known as O2 is a complex project with, we believe, great community benefits. The project includes the replacement and expansion of Minneapolis' Fire Station number 1, 90 units of affordable housing, including Section 8 and potentially now homeless housing for homeless, a 312-stall parking facility serving the fire station, the housing, and the replacement of the surface parking lot, and 230 units of market rate housing. All of these components are tightly intertwined, both physically and financially. Over the last 3 years, the development team has been working with the Minneapolis Fire Department, the Minneapolis Department of Finance, Minneapolis Department of Property Services, and CPED to make this project a reality. The new Fire Station number 1 will provide a greatly expanded and modernized facility to serve the growing downtown and downtown east with a U.S. Bank Center in Wells Fargo and 1,000 new multifamily housing units developed over the last 20 years and 1,000 more envisioned 2040. The facility will accommodate additional apparatus, including a new hook and ladder truck that is significantly longer, and first responder emergency equipment and vehicles that cannot be accommodated in the existing 80 to 100-year-old two-bay facility located on the block. The Minneapolis Fire Department determined this to be the best location, design, and configuration for this new expanded fire station to serve the built-up East End. We are grateful for the cooperation of the city departments that have resulted in the land use applications for the complex being approved, but for the one condition that we are appealing today, the 3rd Street curb cut, that is absolutely critical for the successful operation of the project and the fire station. Planning staff, as you know, in Public Works objected to the curb cut on 3rd Street because they feel that one curb cut on Portland and one on 5th is sufficient to serve the complex. We and the public-private partners involved disagree and are appealing. Keep in mind that the 3rd Street curb cut already exists on the block, and the overall project is reducing from 4 to 3 the curb cuts serving the site while developing the site out fully for housing in a fire station. Many of the curb cuts serving the site are right in and right out only, limiting the amount of access into the site. Our appeal is based on a careful analysis and observations that showed during critical rush hour, during all rush hour in key U.S. Bank Stadium events, vehicles are stacked up on 5th Street for long periods of time, waiting for the Washington intersection lights. They are stopped in front of what will be the new fire station exit doors. And the existing traffic, as mentioned, also blocks many of the buses leaving from the Gateway bus garage and the new proposed entrance to the garage ramp being built on the site. Not having a 3rd Street entrance for the ramp and an entrance that already exists, we believe will severely compromise the operation of the 5th Street and the parking garage. This exit 3rd Street also allows users from the garage to exit straight down 3rd Street, either to enter off of the freeway into the ramp without having to go around the traffic jam at 5th Street, and people leaving the garage to exit right down to Washington Avenue Third Street without having to get further provide traffic issues onto the Washington Avenue. As we said, all this is tied together. Without the curb cut, the project circulation system does not work for the parking garage owners, and without the garage curb cut, we believe that it does not work for the fire station. We ask that the committee recommend granting our appeal for these two conditional uses. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Sherman. We'll next hear from Ross Deitley. Is Ross on the line?
I am on the line, yes. Thank you. I signed up to speak just in case George had some technical difficulties, but he covered everything that I wanted to. So I have no further comments.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Steitley. We'll move on to Bob Loken. Is Bob Loken on the call?
I am.
Would you like to speak, Mr.
No, I don't have anything to add to George's testimony, but just want the committee members to know that I'm the architect working on the project and I'm available to answer any questions they might have. That's all.
Thank you for being here today, Mr. Loken. Is Mr. Wayne Alexander on the call? Mr. Alexander? Okay, it does not sound like we're able to tap into Mr. Alexander. I'll ask the clerk if there are any additional speakers in queue on this item.
No additional speakers on this item.
Okay, given there's no additional speakers, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'll ask Mr. Fletcher to comment since this is in his ward.
Thank you, Chair Goodman. I wonder if the appellants can comment. It sounds like there's some confusion between the staff report and Mr. Sherman's report about what the curb cut accomplishes. I think staff reported that it's an entrance only, and Mr. Sherman described it as a way for people to get out of the ramp. So can you clarify what the intended use of the curb cut is? Because I actually think that that changes maybe how I feel about whether this is important or not.
I'll ask the clerk if Mr. Sherman is still on the line.
I believe I'm still on the line, but to be clear, I would like Bob Loken to talk about whether it's a write-in and a write-out, or if it's a write-out, write-in only. I may have been I may have confused the write-out.
Okay.
Sure.
Is Mr. Loken, please? If you could state your name and address for the record, sir.
Sure. Robert Loken, ESG Architects, 500 Washington Avenue South in Minneapolis. The staff report is correct. It is a write-in only on 3rd Street. You cannot exit the facility from 3rd Street. It's a write-in only to the parking garage.
Thank you. Mr. Councilmember Fletcher, does that answer your question?
It does, although I guess I would ask what critical role then does the curb cut serve if you can go immediately around the block? What does it do for traffic flow? I really I think had the impression from a previous iteration of this that it was a right out, and I think the right out makes a lot of sense to me as potentially easing congestion at 5th there, where I think you correctly assess that things do sort of jam up. But I guess I'm sort of a little bit confused about how to interpret what the actual benefit is to traffic flow of having that entrance as an entrance only on 3rd, and whether that's worth the payoff of intersecting with the bike lane and pedestrian flow.
Sure. This is
Mr.
Robert
Loken,
Loken again. Could I ask the clerk to put up the graphic exhibits that we included?
Sure.
Should be 2 plans, and my visual is a little delayed, so let me know when they're up. There should be one graphic plan, site plan, that shows a 3rd Street entrance, and then a second one that shows no 3rd Street entrance. And let me know when those are visible.
So what's visible now is something that I myself can't see since there's a bar across the bottom of the entrance and the exit. There's only one piece up, but I can't see the area that's circled due to the bar that's controlling my computer. Maybe everyone.
I think I can describe it fairly effectively. Oh, that's a different exhibit. This is the planning staff's exhibit. With our sign up, we submitted some graphic exhibits, but if those aren't available, I think this is sufficient to describe the issue. Basically, what the 3rd Street entrance does is, particularly during US Bank events, when thousands of people are streaming into downtown Minneapolis to find parking, when the primary parking garage, the 1,000 stall parking garage near the US Bank Stadium is full, and people come down 3rd Street looking for more parking, they come to park here, currently a surface parking lot. And the amount of cars entering the facility, the majority of them during these US Bank Stadium events are entering from 3rd Street. And if this 3rd Street entrance were not available, they would have to go on to 5th Avenue to get into the facility, which doesn't seem like a very big difference, except for the fact that the facility may not be able to handle all of those incoming vehicles during that crush loading. And the concern is that they will stack up in front of the fire station on 5th Avenue, also in front of the Gateway Transit facility on 5th Avenue. This is a very congested block, and the concern is that those additional cars will impede the ability of the fire trucks and the apparatus to exit. And so getting those cars into the facility without having to travel in front of the fire station is this primary critical benefit.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher and members of the committee, did that answer the question?
It did, thank you. And can you describe how the decision was made to orient the fire station to 5th? Because I think that's the other thing that may have changed from an iteration of this that I saw before.
Sure, yeah. So originally, the reason why the fire station is located here is because the existing fire station is located elsewhere on the block. So it's a matter of phasing. We need to complete the new fire station before we can demolish the old fire station. So the new fire station needs to be located on this end of the block, on the intersection of 5th Avenue and 3rd Street. And one iteration, we did show the apparatus bays on facing 3rd Street, and the parking garage, or not the parking garage, the apparatus bays, the fire equipment bays on the corner, and the human uses on 5th Street. Through working with staff planning, the planners desired to have a more active use on that corner, and so that's what we've done. And through working with the fire department, they assessed this and determined that this works for them as well. But the reason why the bays are oriented the way they are is so that we can have active uses on the corner. So there's a day room for the firefighters. There's a public entrance there. There's an exercise facility, and with windows into the building and good transparency at the street level.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, and I apologize, Chair Goodman. I kind of thought I had my head around this project, and then this looks a little different than what than an earlier version I had looked at. So I want to make sure I'm asking questions and getting to the right answer here. So this would be a curb cut that would be functional as an entrance to the parking ramp at all times of day, 24/7. But that's really only needed for probably 40 events a year.
Its benefit is in the public benefit is increased during those public events.
So there's a different graphic up in front of us now.
I'm not able to see that one yet. Does it have some arrows on it?
Yes.
Okay. So I think what we're looking at is a graphic, a site plan that was similar to the one we had up before, but it shows basically the flow of cars and the number of vehicles and where they're entering is based on information taken from 2 U.S. Bank Stadium events in 2008. One was a concert and the other one was a preseason football game. And so you can see the yellow arrow, the cars entering the 3rd Street entrance. There's 2 numbers in that oval. One of the numbers represents the number of cars in the peak 15 minutes, and the larger number represents the number of cars entering in the peak 60 minutes. And understand that this is data taken from the current situation where this is a surface parking lot, but the entrances that we're proposing are similar in location, with the exception of the fact that the Washington entrance that's there currently is proposed to be eliminated. So here you can see that the majority of cars entering the facility are entering from 3rd Street. And if you could then move to the next slide. Let me know when you see that one.
We do, sir.
The next slide shows the increase in number of vehicles that will now have to travel on 5th Avenue. So the number of vehicles entering the facility currently from 5th Avenue are 4 vehicles during the peak 15 minutes and 11 vehicles during the peak 60 minutes. With the elimination of the 3rd Street entrance, that would be increased to 41 vehicles in the peak 15 minutes and 92 vehicles in the peak hour. And we've done analysis with Walker Parking Consultants, who is the parking consultant for the public parking facility. And they've done an analysis based on how quickly they can process vehicles entering. And this peak load will start to stack up cars in front of those apparatus bay doors.
Are there any further questions for the applicant?
Yes, Chair, I've got a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you. Just have a question about that, kind of to follow up on Councilmember Fletcher's line of questioning. You talked a little bit about the impact on the fire station as well as Metro Transit, but it sounds like those effects will primarily be focused around 40 events a year. Could you go into a little more detail? I mean, this is the entrance of fire, the entrance exit of a fire station, so it is very serious. But is this something they'll be delayed? Is this something that they wouldn't be able to get out? Like, what does this look like?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, what the firefighters do is right now when on their facility, they have the ability to block traffic at an intersection, at a semaphore. But I think if there were vehicles stacked up waiting at the Washington traffic light to get out, this is basically all those vehicles would be would have to be moved through that intersection, particularly vehicles directly in front of the fire station would have to be moved through that intersection somehow to let the fire apparatus out. It's not, I think it's not a function of, working or not working. It's a function of improving safety and limiting the possibility of delays. Every second in a response to an emergency is important. So if this delays, it's not that vehicles won't be able to get out, it's that they might be delayed, and those delays have serious impacts.
Oh, thank you.
Any further questions from members of the committee? Anyone?
Could I ask one?
Absolutely, Councilmember Gordon.
I'm just curious if the fire department weighed in at the planning commission at all on this, the necessity for this curb cut or not, or I'm assuming nobody, I don't see anybody from the department here, but maybe Councilmember Schrader was at that meeting, or staff can let us know the fire department's position.
Hi, this is Mei Ling speaking. The fire station, or like the fire department, was not at the planning commission, but they've been in close coordination with the applicant about the overall design of this. Currently, let's say that there's a call south of this site. The fire trucks would actually go south and cross traffic to go south on Portland. They're expecting that there might be situations where if they have to go west, they wouldn't actually go north on 5th to go to Washington to go all the way around. They would probably just cut across traffic. I understand that that maybe does not resolve the issue of whether there would be cars backed up, queued, trying to turn onto 5th, but that is something, you know, they're flexible. They just make it work however they have to, and that's kind of been their position the whole way. But yeah, the fire department is very familiar with the current design.
This is George Sherman, and you know, we've been working with the fire department, and this curb cut was very much part of the solution that we could come up with to deal with the concerns of the parking ramp owners who are concerned about how do they get into the ramp, and the fire station about how they get out of the station. I think it's fair to say that without this curb cut, the ramp owners would not entertain the reconstruction of a fire station on this corner, which, you know, we share, you know, we are all partners in this, trying to make this work, and we're trying to make it work for everybody involved. And I think the data shows that during these events, people will not be able to adequately get into the ramp without backing up substantially on the 3rd.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Can I just clarify this then?
Sure.
Okay. So the fire department was involved in developing the plan that went forward, which included this write-in curb cut, and then the planning commission put in a condition that it had to be removed. Is that correct? Yes. It was, and staff was also recommending removal of the curb cut as well?
Yes.
Yes,
staff
and this is the case where not.
Thank you.
This is a case where not all departments agree, okay? But the fire department was involved in this, laying out everything in the station, from how they get ambulances in it, how they get their own vehicles. This entrance also serves the fire department about how they get their employees into the ramp, about when they need additional employees. So it has been extensively drawn, and we've tried to work on solutions for this for over 3 years, and it really is we're not appealing this just without knowing that it is a key component of how all the parties found a resolution to this issue.
So could I just make a comment, Chair Goodman?
Yes, sir.
This sounds like it's a tough situation. I've been briefed a little bit on this, so I certainly want to defer to the council member whose ward it's in for any motions. But at this point, I don't, and I know that we're all working hard to eliminate curb cuts because it helps with pedestrians and it creates more safety. But this write-in option here, coming prior to when people might be turning to block the fire station traffic, makes some sense to me, and I'm sympathetic with the case that's been made by the appellant.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Goodman, and I'm getting close to a motion here, and I'll say I'm generally inclined to want to support this. I think that there are so many moving pieces to this project, and a lot of things that are working really well for it. I wonder, is it possible? Well, I guess I have 2 additional questions for the applicant. One is the only way out of the ramp on 5th? Is the first thing that I want to know. And then the second thing I'm wondering is if this is really only something that provides a community benefit during events, is it possible to have it be configured to only be open during events so that there's not the conflict with the bike lane during the rest of the time with car traffic coming in and out?
Mr. Sherman, can you answer those 2 questions briefly?
First off, I'm going to ask Bob Loken about, I believe there's an exit from on Portland from the ramp, but again, I want to be correct about the ramp, or if that's only an entrance. Bob?
That's correct. It's so the 5th Avenue is a right in and right out. Portland Avenue is a right in and a right out. And 3rd Street is a right in only.
Okay. So there is a right.
I'll also note that the operation of turning from a street into a facility is significantly safer than the operation of a vehicle exiting a parking facility. Drivers have much better visibility when they're on the street entering into a facility than when they're exiting a facility. That's where if you walk downtown during rush hour, you'll hear the incessant car approaching. That's for cars that are exiting, and that's the primary danger for bicyclists and pedestrians. So the right in operation is safer than a right in and right out. And I will also note that if these cars continue on 3rd Street and have to turn on 5th Street, they'll be crossing the bike lane on 5th Street as well, and sometimes making a right turn on red, which is also a dangerous move because typically drivers are looking only in the direction of traffic when they're turning right on red. So we feel that this is a safer way to get cars in regards to pedestrians and bicyclists as well.
Councilmember Fletcher, have your questions been answered?
The first one was my question about could that entrance be configured to only be open for events or only at certain peak times, is something I'd be curious to hear a response on.
Mr. Sherman or Mr. Loken?
Councilmember Fletcher and Councilmember Goodman. That's a question that we would certainly entertain asking the operators. And I know we have a committee hearing today and a vote has to be taken, but if the operators would agree to that, the applicant would agree to that, but we have a limited amount of time to reach them. And this was a very critical concern of theirs. And, so I'm punting a bit, but, their real concern was during major events coming in off the freeway and about how people would go around the corner. And we agreed with them, and I would, I think, so with that, I don't, there's not really a way to approve it. If there's a way to approve it with us getting back to you, it'd be great. But we'd be open to that consideration. That is their main concern. There is the fire department vehicles, though, also going at this corner, but I think we can hopefully find alternatives for the fire department. They have 20 vehicles that they need to park for their employees, and this is how they get into that ramp.
Okay, I hear Councilmember Fletcher. I heard Mr. Sherman say he doesn't know. He hasn't talked to the users, so I don't want to put him on the spot and make him commit to something he can't commit to. Ms. Smith. Just calling on staff.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. I just wanted to clarify a few things that I was talking about before. So just backing up, we have been in conversations with this applicant team for 3 years. The planning department position and the public works and the property services position from the beginning has been that we should have no more than 2 curb cuts serving the site. And since that time, the applicant has changed the orientation of the fire station a bit. I don't have any proof that the fire department feels adamantly that they need to have this ingress on 3rd Street. That's not something that has been communicated to me from the fire department. I think that their focus has been a little bit more on the design of the actual station. And so I don't think it would be fair to say that they need to have this curb cut. I don't have any proof of that. And I also would like to just clarify Public Works position. They've been working with Public Property Services, and they've provided their own analysis about traffic around the site with or without this curb cut, and they take very seriously pedestrian safety and also the bicycle facilities on this site, and they have responded to an appeal from the applicant about this, and they have stated, with a very long letter explaining why their position is maximum 2 curb cuts. So I just want to point out that this has been a point that we've been going back to for 3 years with the applicant, and I also want to say that the TDMP, as I mentioned in my presentation, the TDMP demonstrates that there really is no noticeable traffic impact with you opening up this curb cut. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher, do you have anything to add before I close the public hearing?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing then, seeing that there are no additional speakers. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion, or would you prefer I offer my opinion and make a motion? I will defer to Councilmember Fletcher first. Councilmember Fletcher, I believe your mic is not on.
Thank you. I think at the end of the day, I see the applicant's point of view on this, and so I think with some amount of caution, and I think there's things that are imperfect about this, about this block and about this proposal, in some ways, particularly just the conditions of the current owner requiring the replacement of parking. So there's a lot of parking going into this relative to developments that we're typically approving under the 2040 plan or in general. And I think that it is challenging for us to kind of figure out how we're incorporating rules that are intended for the development that we're envisioning and reconcile that with the development that's in front of us that has some unique conditions. And so I guess I want to really noting that I'm hopeful that we can really minimize the impact on the pedestrian and bicycle experience on 3rd Street, and that we can consider having that entrance use be minimized outside of events. I'm going to go ahead and move that we grant the appeal.
On the motion to grant the appeal, are there any further comments or questions? Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Chair Goodman. I'll be supporting Councilmember Fletcher's motion. I think it was really helpful to hear the impact on the fire station. That didn't come through as much at the Planning Commission, but I do want to stress that it, like Councilmember Fletcher talked about, like that this 3rd curb cut is not utilized. See if there's some way to just use it in those key times that it would impact the fire station. Thank you.
Further comments or questions on Councilmember Fletcher's motion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Schrader?
Aye.
Reich?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Fletcher?
Aye.
Ellison?
Aye.
Chair Goodman?
Aye.
There's 6 ayes.
That item passes. The appeal has been granted. Seeing no further business before us and with no objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.